I am Marcus, 32 years old, and until recently, a marketing executive in Boston, who always felt like the invisible son. When I discovered my parents and younger brother took off on a luxury European vacation without even telling me I existed, something inside me finally broke. I packed my bags and disappeared from their lives completely. Now, years later, they are desperately trying to reconnect with me, for a reason I never saw coming. Before I tell you how my own family forgot I existed, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button to join our storytelling community. Growing up in Westport, Connecticut, was supposed to be the American dream. Our colonial-style house sat on 2 acres in an exclusive neighborhood. My father drove a Mercedes, and my mother hosted dinner parties that were the talk of the social circuit. From the outside, we were the perfect family. But perfection has a way of hiding the deepest cracks. My father Richard built his reputation as one of the most ruthless corporate lawyers in New England. He worked 80-hour weeks, demolished opposing counsel, and expected nothing less than excellence from everyone around him, especially his sons. His philosophy was simple: second place is just the first loser. Every conversation with him felt like a cross-examination, where I was always the guilty party. My mother Diana ran a successful interior design business catering to the wealthy families in our area. She was obsessed with appearances and social standing. Our home looked like it belonged in Architectural Digest, and she made sure we all played our roles in the family image she had crafted. For social events, she would inspect my outfit, fixing my collar or changing my tie without a word, as if I were a mannequin rather than her son. Then there was Ethan, my younger brother by 5 years. From the moment he was born, he became the center of the family universe. While I was all awkward angles and quiet introspection, Ethan was charismatic, athletic, and effortlessly charming. He played quarterback on the football team, dated the prettiest girls, and had that magnetic personality that drew people in. Our parents glowed with pride whenever he entered a room. The signs of favoritism started early. For my 10th birthday, I received practical gifts like clothes and books. When Ethan turned 10, he got a lavish party with a hired magician and a custom gaming system. When I made honor roll every semester, it was expected. When Ethan got a single A-, they took him out for a celebration dinner. I still remember my high school graduation. I was valedictorian, gave a speech that received a standing ovation, and had just been accepted to Cornell University with a partial scholarship. At the family dinner afterward, my father spent 10 minutes congratulating me before the conversation shifted to Ethan making the varsity baseball team as a freshman. For the next 2 hours, the focus never returned to my accomplishment. College provided some escape, but family dynamics followed me like a shadow. During those 4 years, my parents attended exactly 2 of my events on campus. They never missed a single one of Ethan's high school games, even traveling out of state for tournaments. Every achievement of mine seemed to be measured against what it meant for the family reputation, rather than as something to be proud of for its own sake. After graduation, I made the decision to move to Boston, instead of returning to Connecticut or following the path to Wall Street my father had mapped out for me. I needed space to breathe, to figure out who I was outside of being the overlooked elder son. I took a job at a mid-sized marketing firm, rented a small but comfortable apartment in Back Bay, and started building my own life. Over the next 8 years, I worked my way up to executive level at the company. I developed campaigns for major national brands, won industry awards, and built a reputation as someone with both creative vision and business acumen. I dated occasionally, but never found anyone who felt right for the long term. Maybe part of me was still carrying the message from childhood that I was somehow not quite enough. Throughout all those years in Boston, I maintained contact with my family through sheer determination. I was always the one to call first, always the one to suggest visiting, always the one remembering birthdays and anniversaries with thoughtful gifts and cards. When I would visit Connecticut for holidays, I would sit at the dinner table listening to Ethan's latest accomplishments while my parents beamed. If I mentioned a work success, my father would nod distractedly, and my mother would say something like, "That is nice, dear," before turning the conversation back to my brother. Despite everything, I genuinely wanted a relationship with my family. I told myself that they loved me in their own way, that their behavior was not intentional neglect, but simply a blind spot. I convinced myself that if I just tried harder, communicated better, or achieved more, They would finally see me. Every month without fail, I would drive the 2 hours from Boston to Connecticut for Sunday dinner, an appointment I kept sacred, even when work deadlines loomed or Boston weather made the journey treacherous. Looking back now, I can see how one-sided those efforts were. In the 3 years before everything fell apart, my parents visited my apartment exactly once, staying less than 2 hours before heading back home because they had plans with friends in the area. Ethan occasionally texted me for advice when he needed something, but rarely just to check in. I was family when convenient, invisible when not. Still, nothing prepared me for what was about to happen. It was a Friday evening in early June when my life changed forever. I had just wrapped up a successful presentation to a new client and was feeling good about the weekend ahead. As was my tradition, I called home to confirm plans for our monthly family dinner that Sunday. Instead of my mother or father answering, it was Maria, their housekeeper of 15 years. "Marcus, how are you, sweetheart?" Maria had always shown me more genuine warmth than my own mother. "I am great, Maria. Just calling to check what time dinner is on Sunday. Is Mom around?" There was an awkward pause before Maria spoke again, her voice tinged with confusion. "Oh, Marcus, they are not here. The family left for Europe 2 days ago. A 3-week vacation. Did they not tell you?" I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Europe. All of them. "Yes, your parents and Ethan. They are in Italy first, then France and Spain. They were very excited. Your mother spent weeks planning everything." My mind was spinning trying to process this information. "I see. When did they decide on this trip?" "At least 2 months ago. Your mother has been talking about nothing else. She had me shopping for special outfits and luggage. I am so sorry, Marcus. I thought you knew." After thanking Maria and ending the call, I sat in stunned silence in my living room. 2 months of planning, weeks of excitement and preparation, and not a single text or call to even mention it to me, let alone invite me. With shaking hands, I opened Instagram. My mother was not particularly tech-savvy, but she had recently become obsessed with documenting family moments to share with her social circle. Sure enough, her profile had been updated hours earlier, with photos of my father, mother, and Ethan enjoying sunset cocktails on a terrace overlooking the Amalfi Coast. I scrolled through more images posted over the past 2 days. The 3 of them boarding a first-class flight, my mother's caption reading, "Off, on our European adventure." Another showing them at a 5-star hotel in Rome, family time in the Eternal City. There were photos of elaborate meals, tourist attractions, and candid moments of laughter. In every image, they looked completely content, a perfect family unit of 3. The comments section was even worse. Friends of my parents writing things like, "What a beautiful family vacation," and "The 3 of you look so happy together." My mother responding with, "The Harper family needed this quality time together." The Harper family. As if I were not a Harper. As if I did not exist. With increasingly frantic energy, I called my father's cell phone. Straight to voicemail. I tried my mother's. Same result. I sent text messages to both of them trying to keep my tone neutral. "Just heard about the Europe trip from Maria. Hope you are having a great time. Would have loved to know about it." Finally, I tried Ethan. After several rings, he picked up the sound of music and chatter in the background. "Marcus? Hey, what is up?" He sounded distracted, slightly annoyed at the interruption. "You are in Europe. No one thought to mention this to me." "Oh yeah, we are in Italy. It is awesome. Hold on." I heard him moving, the background noise dimming. "Sorry, had to step outside. We are at this amazing restaurant in Positano." "Ethan, why did no one tell me about this trip? You all have been planning it for months." There was an uncomfortable pause. "I guess Mom and Dad thought you would be too busy with work to join. You know how you are always talking about deadlines and stuff." "Too busy? I have never missed our monthly family dinner in 3 years. I make time for family." "Look, Marcus, I do not know what to tell you. It was not my decision. Mom just said it would be the 3 of us." Before I could respond, I heard my mother's voice in the background calling for Ethan. "I gotta go," he said quickly. "We are about to do this wine tasting thing. I will tell them you called okay. The call ended, and I was left sitting alone in my apartment, feeling like I had somehow slipped into an alternate reality where I had no family at all. 3 hours later, my phone finally pinged with a text from my mother. Didn't think you would be interested, Marcus. Enjoying quality time with Ethan before his new job starts. Talk when we return. That was it. 17 words dismissing my existence, treating a family vacation as something I naturally would not be interested in. No apology, no recognition that they had excluded me from a major family event. Just the clear message that quality time was something that happened when I was not around. I spent the night sleepless, replaying memories from throughout my life, seeing them now through a new lens. The family photos where I was positioned slightly apart from the others. The vacations where my preferences were never considered in the planning. The way conversations would continue seamlessly when I left the room, as if my presence or absence made no difference. The truth I had been avoiding for decades finally crystallized. I was an outsider in my own family, not forgotten occasionally, but fundamentally unseen. The Europe trip was not an oversight or a misunderstanding. It was simply the most blatant manifestation of how they had always viewed me. As optional, as peripheral, as less than essential to what constituted the Harper family. The realization broke something fundamental inside me, a break that would lead to the most drastic decision of my life. The days following my discovery were a blur of pain and confusion. I moved through my daily routines like a ghost showing up at work physically, while my mind replayed 32 years of subtle rejections and dismissals on an endless loop. Colleagues noticed my distraction, but I brushed off their concerns with vague excuses about not sleeping well. The initial shock gradually gave way to a deep throbbing hurt that settled in my chest like a physical weight. I found myself remembering incidents I had previously rationalized away: my 16th birthday, when my parents scheduled a business trip and left me with a neighbor while taking Ethan along for the experience. The time I was hospitalized with appendicitis, and my mother left after an hour because Ethan had a scrimmage game she could not miss. The graduation parties, job promotions, and personal milestones that were acknowledged with perfunctory congratulations, while Ethan's achievements warranted elaborate celebrations. On Sunday evening, 1 week after learning about the Europe trip, I called my best friend, Anthony. Unlike my few other close relationships, Anthony had known me since college and had witnessed my family dynamic firsthand on several occasions. They did what Anthony's outrage was immediate and validating. Marcus, that is beyond messed up. That is not normal family behavior. I keep thinking maybe I am overreacting. I admitted, putting voice to the doubt that had been my companion since childhood. Listen to me. Anthony's voice grew serious. I have seen how you bend over backward for them. You reschedule important work commitments for their convenience. You drive through snowstorms to make Sunday dinners. You remember every birthday and anniversary. And they cannot even text you about a luxury vacation they have been planning for months. No, buddy, you are not overreacting. If anything, you have been underreacting for years. So what do I do now? Maybe it is time to stop chasing their approval. You have spent your entire adult life trying to be seen by people who have made a choice not to see you. At some point, you have to ask yourself what you are getting from this relationship. Anthony's words hit me hard, partly because they reflected thoughts I had been too loyal to entertain. What was I getting from my relationship with my family? Constant disappointment. Regular reminders of my secondary status. The perpetual message that no matter what I achieved, it would never be quite enough to make me truly important to them. My work performance continued to suffer as my emotional state deteriorated. After missing key points in an important client meeting, my boss Rachel called me into her office. Marcus, this is not like you. Is everything okay? I had always kept my personal and professional lives strictly separated, but something about Rachel's genuine concern broke through my defenses. To my horror, I found myself fighting back tears as I gave her a condensed version of the situation. Rachel listened without interruption, then leaned forward with an intensity that commanded my attention. Marcus, I hope this is not overstepping, but have you considered talking to someone professional about this? The company health plan covers therapy sessions. The suggestion caught me off guard. In the Harper family, therapy was viewed as something for weak people who cannot handle their problems. but I was beginning to understand just how damaging many of my family's attitudes had been. The next day, I called the number Rachel had given me and scheduled an appointment with Dr. Lawson, a psychologist specializing in family dynamics. In our first session, I poured out the story of my relationship with my parents and brother, including the recent Europe trip revelation. Dr. Lawson's response was measured but direct. What you are describing is a pattern of emotional neglect. It is a form of invisible trauma that can be particularly damaging because it is characterized not by what happened, but by what did not happen. The attention not given, the inclusion not offered, the love not expressed. But they are my family. I protested weakly, the lifelong instinct to defend them still strong. Family relationships should be nurturing and supportive, not sources of chronic pain. Sometimes, creating distance from family members who consistently hurt us is not only appropriate, but necessary for our psychological health. Over the next 3 sessions, Dr. Lawson helped me see how my relationship with my family had shaped my self-image, my relationships with others, and even my career choices. I had been seeking in professional achievement the validation I never received at home. I had avoided deep romantic connections out of a subconscious fear that anyone who truly knew me would find me as disposable as my family seemed to. 2 weeks into this painful self-examination, I woke up at 3 in the morning with a startling clarity. For 32 years, I had been chasing after people who had demonstrated consistently and unmistakably that they did not value me as an essential part of their lives. I had been pouring energy, love, and hope into relationships that returned only the minimum investment. I had been accepting scraps of attention and convincing myself they were feasts. And in that moment of clarity, I knew I deserved better. I deserved to be valued. I deserved to be seen. I deserved to be someone's priority, not an afterthought. The decision crystallized in my mind with surprising solidity. I would remove myself completely from their lives, just as they had removed me from theirs. No more one-sided effort. No more chasing validation that never came. No more pretending we were a normal, loving family when all evidence pointed to the contrary. I would disappear. Not out of spite or revenge, but as an act of self-preservation and self-respect. And perhaps someday they would realize what they had lost. Or perhaps they would not notice at all. Either way, I would no longer structure my life around their approval. The decision brought an unexpected sense of peace. For the first time in years, I slept through the night without waking my mind. Finally quiet, after making the decision my heart had been pushing me toward for longer than I had been willing to admit. Once I made the decision to leave, I approached it with the same methodical attention to detail that had made me successful in my professional life. This would not be a dramatic storming out or an impulsive reaction. It would be a carefully orchestrated exit from a life that no longer served me. My first step was a conversation with Rachel at work. I requested a 3-month leave of absence, explaining that I was dealing with personal issues that required my full attention. I half expected resistance, or at least probing questions, but Rachel surprised me. "I have been concerned about you, Marcus. You have been one of our most dedicated executives for years, never taking more than a week off at a time. If you need 3 months, I trust your judgment completely. Your position will be here when you return, if that is what you want." Her immediate support and concern made my throat tight with emotion. Here was my boss showing more care for my well-being than my own parents had in years. "Thank you, Rachel. I might not come back to Boston at all, but I appreciate knowing I have options." She nodded understanding. "Whatever you decide, you have my support. You are too talented to lose, but your health comes first. Take care of yourself, Marcus." With work arrangements settled, I turned to my living situation. I contacted a real estate agent and put my apartment on the market. The Boston housing market was hot, and I received a good offer within days. Most of my furniture would be sold or donated. I kept only what held genuine sentimental value, or would be useful in my new life, whatever shape that might take. Next came the logistical details of disappearing. I set up mail forwarding to a P.O. box that Anthony would check for me. I closed local accounts and established new ones with online banks. I purchased a new phone with a different number and made arrangements to have my current number disconnected after I left. I researched states with lower profiles and good job markets for marketing professionals, eventually settling on the Pacific Northwest as my destination. The hardest part was saying goodbye to Anthony, the one person in my life who had consistently seen and valued me for who I was. "Are you sure about this, Marcus?" he asked as we shared a final dinner at my now nearly empty apartment. "Cutting off all contact seems extreme. I need a clean break," I explained. "As long as they can reach me, I will keep hoping for change that never comes. I need to build a life where my value is not determined by their recognition." Anthony nodded slowly. "I understand. Just promise you will stay in touch with me. I want to know you are okay. You will be my only connection to this life, I promised. But you cannot tell them anything about where I am or how to reach me no matter what. I need your word on that." "You have it," he said solemnly, "though I doubt they will try very hard to find you." His comment stung with its accuracy. My family was still in Europe, completely unaware that I was dismantling my life. They had not reached out since my mother's dismissive text, apparently enjoying their family vacation without a second thought about me. The morning of my departure arrived with unexpected emotional weight. I had sold my car and purchased a different one in cash to avoid the paper trail. My essential belongings fit into 3 suitcases. Standing in the empty apartment where I had lived for the past 5 years, I felt a curious mixture of grief and liberation. On the kitchen counter, I left my keys and a note for the real estate agent. I had considered leaving a letter for my family, but ultimately decided against it. What could I say that would matter? If 32 years of my presence in their lives had not been enough to make them value me, no parting words would change that reality. Driving away from Boston felt like shedding a skin that had grown too restrictive. Each mile that passed brought both anxiety and relief in equal measure. I had no specific plan beyond putting distance between myself and the life I was leaving behind. I would take my time traveling cross-country as a form of therapy, letting the open road help me process the pain and begin healing. I drove west with the windows down, music playing, stopping in small towns and national parks along the way. I hiked mountain trails in the Adirondacks, walked along the shores of the Great Lakes, stood in awe beneath the endless skies of the Plains states. With each passing day, I felt less like Marcus Harper, the overlooked son, and more like a person in his own right, someone with choices and possibilities. By the time I reached Portland, Oregon 3 weeks later, I had begun to imagine a new identity for myself. Not legally changed, but simplified. I would go by Mark instead of Marcus. I would not lie about my past, but neither would I volunteer information about the family I had left behind. I would start fresh, defined, not by who had failed to love me, but by who I chose to become. Portland felt right immediately, with its combination of urban energy and natural beauty. I found a modestly priced apartment in a diverse neighborhood, paid 6 months' rent in advance, and began exploring my new city. For the first time in my adult life, I made decisions based solely on my own preferences, without the unconscious calculation of how my choices would be judged by my family. The freedom was both exhilarating and terrifying. My family still had no idea I was gone. Based on their social media posts, they had extended their European vacation by an additional week and were now island hopping in Greece. I wondered idly if they would even notice my absence when they returned, or if my monthly visits were so inconsequential to them that they would simply carry on without registering the change. The thought hurt, but less than it would have before my journey west. Distance was already providing perspective. As I unpacked my few belongings in my new apartment, I felt the first tentative sense of home. Not the home I had grown up in, defined by expectations I could never meet, but a home of my own making. A place where I was enough exactly as I was. The first months in Portland were both the most challenging and most liberating of my life. Without the structure of my executive position or the familiar rhythms of Boston, I found myself adrift in a city where no one knew my name or my history. The anonymity was both frightening and freeing, a blank canvas, waiting for me to create something new. Finding work became my initial focus, not just for financial stability, but for the sense of purpose and connection it would provide. I had enough savings to last a year if necessary, but I knew isolation would only feed the lingering sadness I carried. After sending out numerous applications, I received an offer from Cascade Creative, a boutique marketing agency specializing in sustainable businesses and nonprofits. The position was several steps down from my executive role in Boston with a corresponding drop in salary, but the company's values and collaborative culture appealed to me immediately. "We were impressed by your portfolio," said Liam, the agency founder, during my interview. "Actually, we are a bit surprised. Someone with your experience would be interested in our small operation." I offered a simplified version of the truth. I needed a fresh start in a new city. "Your agency's commitment to working with organizations making positive changes aligns with where I want my career to go now." Liam nodded approvingly. "Well, we are glad Boston's loss is Portland's gain. When can you start?" My coworkers became my first social connections in Portland. There was Zoe, the bright graphic designer who took me under her wing, showing me the best coffee shops and food trucks near the office. Miguel, the tech specialist who invited me to weekly pickup basketball games at a nearby park. Jessica, the account manager who shared my love of obscure indie films and invited me to a local film festival. These casual friendships slowly began filling the emotional void left by my self-imposed exile from my previous life. I maintained my promise to stay in touch with Anthony, calling him every Sunday evening to update him on my new life. During one of these calls about 6 weeks after I left Boston, he shared the news I had been both expecting and dreading. "Your family is back from Europe," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "Your mother called me yesterday asking if I had heard from you." My heart thumped painfully despite my resolve. "What did you say?" "That I had not spoken to you recently, and did not know where you were, which was technically true at the time of her call." She seemed more annoyed than concerned, complained that you were not answering their calls, and had missed the monthly dinner. The confirmation of my suspicions stung despite my preparation, so it took them over 6 weeks to even notice I was gone. "They said they tried calling when they got back 2 weeks ago, but your number was disconnected. They assumed you had changed phones and would eventually contact them. It was only when you missed the dinner that they thought something might be wrong." I absorbed this information silently. 6 weeks. 6 weeks of my complete absence from their lives before they felt concerned enough to start looking for me. I thought about the countless times I had rearranged my schedule for them, the immediate responses to their infrequent calls, the dutiful presence at every family event. 6 weeks. "Are you okay?" Anthony asked into my silence. Yes, I realized with some surprise that it was true. Their reaction just confirms I made the right decision. In the months that followed, I continued building my Portland life piece by piece. I joined a local hiking group, exploring the stunning trails around Mount Hood and the Columbia River Gorge. I volunteered at a literacy program teaching adults to read, finding unexpected fulfillment in helping others unlock new possibilities in their lives. I discovered a neighborhood bookstore with a back room where local musicians performed on weekends, becoming a regular at their events. And then I met Sophia. It happened at a First Thursday art walk in the Pearl District, where I had wandered into a small gallery featuring local artists. I was studying a particularly striking landscape when a voice beside me said, "The artist spent 3 months living in that forest before painting a single stroke." She said she needed to know the place from the inside out. I turned to find a woman with warm brown eyes and an easy smile. She introduced herself as Sophia Chen, the gallery owner. Something about her quiet confidence and genuine enthusiasm for the artists she represented drew me in immediately. We spent the next hour discussing the exhibition, then continued the conversation over dinner at a nearby restaurant. Sophia was unlike anyone I had dated in Boston. She approached life with a refreshing directness and emotional honesty that contrasted sharply with the reserved New England sensibility I had grown up with. Her family had emigrated from Taiwan when she was a child, settling in Portland, where her parents opened a small restaurant that eventually grew into a successful local chain. She spoke of her family with an affection that was both foreign and fascinating to me. "My parents worked so hard to give us opportunities," she explained over our third dinner together, "but they never made us feel like their love was conditional on our success. My brother became a doctor like they hoped, but I chose art instead of business school. They were equally proud of both choices because they saw us finding our own paths." The concept was so different from my experience that I struggled to imagine it. Parental pride, not as a reward for meeting expectations, but as a constant, reliable presence, regardless of the path chosen. As our relationship deepened over the following months, Sophia gradually drew out my story. I had been vague about my past initially, but her patient interest and non-judgmental listening created a space where I could finally share the truth. "So your family has no idea where you are?" she asked when I finally explained my sudden relocation to Portland. "My friend Anthony knows, but he has promised not to tell them. They have apparently made some effort to find me calling mutual acquaintances and my former workplace. But according to Anthony, it seems more like they are annoyed by the inconvenience of my disappearance than truly worried about my well-being." Sophia considered this thoughtfully. "I cannot imagine not moving heaven and earth to find someone I loved who had disappeared. When my cousin ran away as a teenager, my entire extended family dropped everything to search for her." Her comment highlighted the contrast between her family experience and mine in a way that made my chest ache. Yet instead of the usual pain, I felt a curious hope. Sophia's family represented a possibility I had never considered, that family relationships could be built on genuine care rather than obligation and appearance. As our relationship progressed, Sophia introduced me to her parents' brother and extended family. I was initially awkward and guarded at their gatherings, unsure how to navigate the easy affection and good-natured teasing that characterized their interactions. But they welcomed me with a warmth that gradually thawed my reservations. "You seem surprised when people ask about your work or your interests," Sophia observed after one Sunday dinner with her family. "You get this look on your face, like you cannot believe someone actually wants to hear your answer." Her perception was uncomfortably accurate. I guess I am not used to being the focus of attention in family settings. In my family conversations, usually revolved around my brother or my parents' accomplishments. Sophia squeezed my hand. "Well, get used to it. My family asks because they genuinely want to know you. That is what family does." 9 months into my new life, Anthony called with an update that caught me off guard. "Your brother has been calling me every few weeks asking about you." His most recent message seemed different, less entitled, and more genuinely concerned. He mentioned that your parents had been telling people you were on an extended work assignment overseas to explain your absence. The information landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through my carefully constructed piece. They are saving face rather than admitting they have no idea where their son is. Probably Anthony agreed. But Ethan seemed genuinely upset. He said he never realized how much the family dynamic affected you until you were gone. His words, not mine. I absorbed this in silence, unsure how to feel about this apparent growth in my brother's awareness. Was it genuine insight, or just another manipulation? "Do you ever think about contacting them?" Anthony asked carefully. "Just to let them know you are okay." I had asked myself the same question with increasing frequency as the initial anger faded into a more complex mix of emotions. Sometimes I admitted, but then I remember 32 years of being an afterthought, and I am not ready to open that door again. Maybe someday, but not yet. As I hung up, I gazed around the apartment I now shared with Sophia, filled with artwork. She had carefully selected books we both loved, and photographs of our hikes and travels together. In just under a year, I had built something I had never fully had before, a life where I was valued for exactly who I was, not for what I could accomplish or how I reflected on others. The pain of my family's neglect had not disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something less acute, more like an old injury that occasionally ached, but no longer defined my daily existence. I was learning slowly, but steadily, that my worth was inherent rather than earned, a lesson that my new relationships reinforced every day. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Thinking of you. Dinner at my parents' tonight. Dad is making your favorite noodles." I smiled at the simple message that conveyed so much. I was seen. I was remembered. I mattered. For now, that was enough. 2 years passed in Portland with surprising swiftness. My position at Cascade Creative had evolved into a partnership role as I brought in new clients and expanded our digital marketing services. Sophia and I had moved from her apartment to a small craftsman-style house with a garden where she grew vegetables, and I built a fire pit for evening gatherings with friends. We were discussing marriage, cautiously exploring what our future together might look like. My communication with Anthony remained my only connection to my past life. From him I received occasional updates about my family, though I never asked directly. My parents had apparently reduced their search efforts after the first 6 months, accepting my absence as yet another disappointment I had inflicted upon them. Ethan, however, continued to contact Anthony sporadically, his messages increasingly reflective about our family dynamics. It was a Tuesday afternoon in April when my carefully constructed new life collided unexpectedly with the one I had left behind. I was in a client meeting when my phone buzzed repeatedly with calls from Anthony. After the third attempt in 10 minutes, I excused myself to answer. "Marcus, I would not call like this if it was not important." Anthony's voice was tight with tension. "Your father had a massive heart attack last night. It is bad. Really bad. He is in intensive care at Massachusetts General." The news hit me like a physical blow, momentarily robbing me of speech. Despite everything, Richard Harper was still my father, the man who had taught me to ride a bike, who had sat beside me working through math problems, who had in his own limited way shaped the person I had become. "Is he going to make it?" I finally managed to ask. "The doctors are not sure. Your mother asked me to find you. She sounded different. Broken. She said she needs both her sons there." Both her sons. The phrase caught in my mind like a burr. After 2 years of silence now, I was suddenly essential. "Ethan has been calling me non-stop," Anthony continued. "He is a mess, Marcus. He keeps saying he needs to talk to you, that there are things he never told you." I leaned against the wall of the conference room, closing my eyes as a storm of conflicting emotions washed over me. Anger at the sudden expectation that I would drop everything and run to them. Fear for my father's condition. Bitter satisfaction that they finally seemed to recognize my absence as significant. And beneath it all, the persistent pull of family ties that had never fully severed despite my best efforts. "I do not know if I can do this, Anthony," I admitted. The thought of walking back into that dynamic, especially during a crisis. "I get it," he said gently. "And whatever you decide, I support you. But I thought you deserved to know, and make your own choice." After hanging up, I returned to the meeting, but my mind was elsewhere. I went through the motions for the remainder of the day before driving home in a daze. Sophia found me sitting on our back porch staring unseeingly at the garden as the evening light faded. She sat beside me, her presence, a comfort even before she spoke. "Bad day." I told her about Anthony's call, the words tumbling out in a jumbled mixture of facts and feelings. She listened without interruption, her hand warm in mine. "What do you want to do?" she asked when I finally fell silent. "I do not know," I admitted. "Part of me says they lost the right to expect anything from me when they forgot my existence for 6 weeks. Another part remembers that he is still my father despite everything." Sophia considered this thoughtfully. "You have every right to protect yourself from people who hurt you, even family, especially family. But I also think you should consider what you will feel a year from now, or 5 years or 20. Will you regret not hearing what they have to say? Will you wish you had been there, if your father does not recover?" Her questions cut through my confusion, focusing my thoughts on the longer view. I had left Boston to escape the pain of being unseen, but I had also found something I never expected: enough self-worth and security to possibly face my family again without being destroyed by their limitations. "I think I need to at least talk to Ethan," I decided. "I can do that without committing to anything more." Sophia nodded. "That seems like a reasonable first step." That night, I texted Anthony for Ethan's current number. 10 minutes later, my phone rang with a Boston area code I did not recognize. "Marcus." My brother's voice sounded strange, strained, and uncertain in a way I had never heard before. "Is it really you?" "It is me." Anthony told me about Dad. There was a sharp intake of breath, then what sounded suspiciously like a stifled sob. "Thank you for calling. I did not know if you would. I have been trying to find you for so long." The naked emotion in his voice caught me off guard. The Ethan I remembered was always composed, always confident, never vulnerable. "How is he?" I asked, steering toward the immediate situation. "Not good. The doctors are saying the next 48 hours are critical. He had a massive blockage. His heart stopped twice during surgery." Ethan's voice cracked. "Mom is falling apart. She has not slept since it happened. She keeps saying she needs to talk to you, that she has to tell you things before it is too late. I felt a twinge of the old bitterness. 2 years of silence, and now suddenly there are urgent things to say. We deserve that, Ethan acknowledged, surprising me again. We deserve your anger and a lot worse. I know that now. It took you disappearing for me to really see what had been happening all along. His admission stirred something unexpected in my chest. What do you mean? After you left, I started seeing our family through different eyes. How everything revolved around me and my needs. How Mom and Dad treated you like an afterthought. How I just accepted their favoritism as my due without ever standing up for you. He paused, his breathing uneven. I started therapy last year. Been working through a lot of stuff about our family. I should have been a better brother to you, Marcus. I am so sorry. The sincerity in his voice pierced through layers of protective detachment I had built around memories of my family. This was not the entitled younger brother I remembered, but someone who had done his own painful growing in my absence. I appreciate that, Ethan, I said carefully. It means something to hear you say it. Would you be willing to video call with Mom and Dad? He asked tentatively. Dad is conscious now, and the doctors say visits should be brief, but seeing you even on a screen would mean everything to them, to all of us. I hesitated, feeling the weight of the decision. I need to think about it. This is a lot to process. Of course, he said quickly. Whatever you decide is okay. Just knowing you are alive and willing to talk to me is more than I hoped for. After we hung up, I sat with Sophia on our couch, her head resting against my shoulder as I recounted the conversation. He sounds like he has really changed, she observed. People can surprise you, I agreed. The question is whether it is genuine growth or just crisis-induced remorse that will disappear once things stabilize. There is only one way to find out, she pointed out gently. The next morning, after a nearly sleepless night, I made my decision. I would do a video call with my parents, but I would maintain clear boundaries. This was not a return to the old dynamic, but a tentative opening to see if something healthier was possible. With Sophia beside me for support, I texted Ethan to arrange the call for that evening when my father would be most alert. The hours until then stretched interminably as I oscillated between certainty and doubt about my choice. When my phone finally lit up with the incoming video call, my heart raced as if I had sprinted up a hill. Sophia squeezed my hand once before moving out of camera range to give me privacy, while remaining nearby for support. I accepted the call, and for the first time in over 2 years, I saw my parents' faces. The sight shocked me more than I had anticipated. My father, always robust and commanding in my memory, looked gaunt and pale against the white hospital pillows. An oxygen tube ran beneath his nose, and the hospital gown hung loosely on his diminished frame. Beside him, my mother appeared to have aged a decade. Deep lines, etched around her eyes and mouth, her usually perfect hair and makeup, replaced by a hasty ponytail and bare face. Marcus, my father's voice was a shadow of its former strength, barely audible over the beeping monitors. Son. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, tears immediately spilling down her cheeks. Oh my God, Marcus, you are really there. For a moment, none of us seemed to know what to say. The weight of 2 years of silence and decades of unaddressed hurt hung in the digital space between us. I heard about your heart attack, I finally said. I am sorry you are going through this. My father made a small gesture with his hand. I am sorry for so much more, he said, each word seeming to cost him considerable effort. Nearly dying has a way of clarifying what matters. My mother leaned closer to the camera. We have been trying to find you since the day we realized you were gone. Private investigators, social media searches, contacting everyone who ever knew you. I raised an eyebrow skeptically. It took you 6 weeks to even notice I was missing. The words hung in the air, direct and undeniable. My mother flinched as if I had slapped her. We deserved that, my father said quietly. We deserved worse. His simple acknowledgement, so unlike his usual defensive responses to criticism, caught me off guard. I had prepared for denials or justifications, not this straightforward acceptance of fault. The heart attack made us face some hard truths, my mother added, but the process started long before when you left. It forced us to look at ourselves in ways we had always avoided. My father shifted slightly in the hospital bed, wincing with the effort. I always thought I was showing love by pushing you to excel, by holding you to higher standards. I told myself I was preparing you for the real world. But the truth is, I took you for granted because you were strong and capable. I poured attention into Ethan because he seemed to need it more. We failed you, my mother said simply, her usual polish completely absent. We made you feel unwanted in your own family. The Europe trip was just the final straw in a lifetime of thoughtless exclusion. Their unexpected self-awareness left me momentarily speechless. I had imagined this conversation countless times over the past 2 years, but never like this. Never with them actually seeing their behavior clearly. "What do you want from me now?" I asked finally, still wary, despite their apparent sincerity. "Just a chance," my father replied. "A chance to show you that we can change, that we want to change, that we see you now, Marcus." "We do not expect forgiveness," my mother added. "We have not earned that. But if you could find it in your heart to stay in contact, to give us the opportunity to build something new." I felt torn between decades of hurt and the unexpected possibility of healing. I cannot just pick up where we left off and pretend nothing happened. Too much has changed. I have changed. "We do not want the old relationship back," my father said with surprising firmness, despite his weakened state. "That relationship was broken. We want to build something new, something better, if you will allow it." I looked at their faces, seeing for perhaps the first time, not the powerful, perfect parents of my childhood, but two flawed humans, capable of both terrible mistakes and genuine growth. "I will think about it. I promise, not yet ready to commit further. For now, focus on getting better, Dad." As the call ended, Sophia returned to the couch and wrapped her arms around me. "How do you feel?" I considered the question carefully. Confused, hopeful, scared, all at once. "Those all seem like appropriate responses to me," she said softly. That night, as I lay awake, processing the conversation, I realized that while my parents seemed genuinely remorseful, words alone could not heal the damage of a lifetime. Only consistent action over time could prove whether their crisis-inspired epiphany was temporary or transformative. The real question was whether I was willing to give them the chance to show me which it would be. 3 days after our video call, I made another decision that surprised even me. Sophia and I would fly to Connecticut. My father had been moved out of intensive care, but remained hospitalized, his recovery proceeding slowly but steadily. While I was not ready to fully re-enter my family's life, I felt a growing certainty that I needed to see them in person to truly assess what, if anything, might be salvaged from our relationship. "Are you sure about this?" Sophia asked, as we packed for the trip. "No," I admitted, "but I think I need to do it anyway." The flight from Portland to Hartford felt like traveling back in time. As the plane descended over the familiar Connecticut landscape, memories flooded back, both painful and occasionally pleasant. I had not allowed myself to miss this place, had not permitted nostalgia to soften the edges of my departure. Now, with Sophia's hand in mine, I found I could acknowledge the complexity of my feelings. This had been my home. For all its emotional minefields, it had shaped me. Ethan was waiting at the arrival's gate, shifting nervously from foot to foot as he scanned the deplaning passengers. When he spotted me, his face lit with a combination of disbelief and joy that seemed impossible to fake. The brother who had always been so cool and collected rushed forward like a child, wrapping me in a tight hug before I could prepare myself for the contact. "You actually came," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I still cannot believe it." Awkwardly, I returned the hug, then stepped back to introduce Sophia. Ethan greeted her with genuine warmth before leading us to his car. As we drove toward Westport, he filled the journey with updates on our father's condition, carefully avoiding deeper topics as if afraid to fracture our tentative reconnection. Seeing the family home again was stranger than I had anticipated. The imposing colonial looked exactly as I remembered, yet somehow smaller, less intimidating than in my memory. My mother was waiting on the front porch, her usual perfect appearance restored, but her confident posture noticeably absent. She moved toward me hesitantly, stopping a few feet away as if unsure of her welcome. "Marcus," she said simply, her eyes drinking in the sight of me. "Thank you for coming." I nodded, maintaining the emotional distance I needed. "This is Sophia, my partner." To my surprise, my mother embraced Sophia, warmly thanking her for accompanying me and for taking care of my son when we failed to. The naked acknowledgement of their failures offered so freely to a stranger suggested a level of self-awareness I had not thought my mother capable of developing. The house itself held fewer ghosts than I had feared. My old room had been preserved almost exactly as I had left it for college 15 years earlier, a time capsule of my teenage self. I ran my fingers over the spines of books I had once treasured, the trophies I had won that had received such minimal recognition, the photographs of a younger me, with friends who had long since faded from my life. "We never changed it," my mother said from the doorway. "Even when you were in Boston, I kept hoping you would want to stay over sometimes. And after you left, it became even more important to keep it as it was, a reminder of what we had lost." Her words contained none of the manipulation I would once have expected, just a simple, painful truth. I nodded acknowledgement, but offered no more, still guarding my emotions carefully. The following morning we visited my father in the hospital. Despite the warning from Ethan, the sight of Richard Harper looking so diminished was jarring. The powerful attorney who had once dominated every room he entered now seemed almost childlike in his vulnerability, his hand shaking slightly as he reached for mine. "You came," he said, echoing Ethan's words from the airport. I did not dare to hope. "I came," I confirmed, "but I do not know what happens next." He nodded, accepting the uncertainty. "Could I speak with you alone for a few minutes?" After Sophia and my mother stepped out, my father gestured to the chair beside his bed. For a long moment, he simply looked at me, his eyes taking in the changes 2 years had wrought. "You seem well," he observed. "More confident? Portland has been good for you." "Very good," I agreed. "I have built a life there that makes me happy." He nodded, then reached with some effort toward the drawer in his bedside table. "There is something I want to show you." From the drawer he withdrew a thick folder, its edges worn with frequent handling. With trembling fingers, he opened it and began spreading the contents across his blanket-covered lap: newspaper clippings, printouts of digital articles, photographs. I leaned closer and felt my breath catch. Every piece featured me or my work in some way. Award announcements from industry publications. A profile in Boston Business Monthly from 5 years earlier. Press releases about marketing campaigns I had led. Social media screenshots of professional accomplishments I had posted. "What is this?" I asked, confused by the collection. "Everything I could find about your career," he said quietly. "Every mention in print or online. Every award, every success." I stared at him, struggling to reconcile this revelation with the father I had known. "You kept all this. Why?" "Because I was proud of you," he said simply. "So proud, Marcus. But I never knew how to tell you. I grew up with a father who believed praising children made them weak, who never once told me I had done well at anything. I promised myself I would be different with my sons, but I failed. With you especially, I fell into the same trap, thinking that pushing you harder, demanding more, was how to make you strong." His hands moved gently over the collected evidence of my professional life. "I used to bore my colleagues talking about your achievements. My son Marcus just led a campaign that increased their clients' revenue by 30%. My son Marcus was named one of Boston's top marketing executives under 40. They probably dreaded seeing me coming." The thought of my taciturn father bragging about me to his law partners was so at odds with my experience of him that I struggled to absorb it. "You never told me any of this." "No," he agreed, regret heavy in his voice. "I told everyone but the one person who needed to hear it. I convinced myself you knew that you did not need the words. Another failure on my part." He carefully gathered the items, returning them to the folder before meeting my eyes directly. "I do not expect this to change anything. I just wanted you to know that, while I failed completely at showing it, I always saw you, Marcus. I saw your brilliance, your work ethic, your integrity. I just did not know how to be the father you deserved." The simple sincerity of his words reached places inside me I had thought permanently closed off, not healing the wounds, not yet, but acknowledging their existence in a way he never had before. In the days that followed, I had similar conversations with my mother and Ethan, each revealing perspectives I had never considered. My mother confessed that her favoritism toward Ethan stemmed partly from her own insecurity, finding it easier to connect with his outgoing personality than with my more thoughtful, reserved nature. Ethan admitted he had been secretly jealous of my intelligence and independence. His neediness, a deliberate strategy to secure attention he feared, would otherwise go to me. None of these revelations erased the years of hurt, but they offered context that helped me see my family as complex, flawed humans rather than the two-dimensional villains they had sometimes become in my pain. After a week in Connecticut, Sophia and I returned to Portland with a tentative plan. I would maintain regular but limited contact with my family while they continued their individual therapy. We would proceed slowly, building something new, rather than trying to repair what had been irrevocably broken. Over the following year, our relationship evolved in unexpected ways. My parents respected the boundaries I set, never pushing for more than I was ready to give. They made efforts to know Sophia, to understand my life in Portland, to see me as I truly was, rather than as they had wanted me to be. When they visited 6 months after my father's recovery, they stayed in a hotel rather than assuming they would stay with us, a small but significant acknowledgement of our separate lives. When Sophia and I decided to marry, I asked Anthony to be my best man, but invited my father and Ethan to be groomsmen, a symbolic inclusion that represented our ongoing healing. The wedding took place in Portland neutral territory that represented my new life while accommodating connections to my past. During the reception, my father rose to offer a toast that I had not expected. To Marcus and Sophia, he began, his voice steady and sure. My son taught me the hardest and most important lesson of my life, that love is not love if it must be earned. True love is given freely, without conditions or expectations. It took nearly losing him forever for me to understand that simple truth. He turned to face me directly. Marcus, you are the strongest person I know, not because you achieved success or overcame obstacles, though you have done both admirably. You are strong because you had the courage to walk away from people who did not value you properly, and the even greater courage to consider letting us back into your life when we finally learned our lesson. I am more proud to be your father than you will ever know. The words I had waited a lifetime to hear now came too late to form the foundation of my self-worth, but not too late to build a bridge toward something healing. I had already found my value reflected in Sophia's love and the respect of my colleagues, in the genuine friendships I had formed in Portland. My father's recognition was no longer essential to my sense of self, but it was welcome nonetheless. 6 months after our wedding, when Sophia and I learned we were expecting our first child, I felt a momentary panic at the thought of parenthood. What if I carried forward the patterns of my own upbringing without realizing it? What if I failed my child as my parents had failed me? I shared these fears with Dr. Lawson, with whom I still had occasional sessions. The very fact that you are asking these questions suggests you will break the pattern, she reassured me. Awareness is the first step toward change. When our daughter Lily was born, I held her tiny form in my arms and made a silent promise she would never doubt her place in my heart. She would never question her worth or feel invisible. The cycle would end with me. My parents and Ethan flew to Portland to meet their granddaughter and niece, their joy in her arrival genuine, but tempered by the awareness of all they had nearly lost. As I watched my mother gently rock Lily, tears streaming unashamedly down her face, I recognized that the healing between us would be lifelong, never complete, but always progressing. The decision to leave had been an act of self-preservation, a necessary step toward valuing myself when those who should have valued me most had failed to do so. The decision to allow them back into my life with clear boundaries and reset expectations was equally an act of self-care, recognizing that people can change if given proper motivation, and that forgiveness, when earned, benefits the forgiver as much as the forgiven. I will never know what would have happened if I had not walked away. Perhaps my father's heart attack would still have triggered reflection, perhaps not. What I do know is that sometimes you must be willing to lose everything to find what truly matters. Sometimes the family you choose, those who see and celebrate your authentic self, matter more than the family you were born into. And sometimes, if you are very fortunate, those two families can eventually become one. As I watch my daughter grow, surrounded by the unconditional love I once thought impossible, I understand the most important lesson of my journey. Your worth is inherent, not earned. It exists regardless of whether others recognize it. The people who truly deserve a place in your life are those who see that worth clearly and celebrate it consistently. Everyone else is just passing through. Have you ever had to walk away from people who did not value you properly? Did you eventually reconnect, or was the separation permanent? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that their worth is not determined by others' recognition. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most healing outcomes.